Hello, in this video we're going to talk about adding content to a poster that we've created using Microsoft PowerPoint 2010 for Windows. And in the first video we talked about how to set up the dimensions of the poster, so we've already done that part. But now we're going to talk about adding content to the poster. One thing, however, that I probably should mention to you is that if you go over to Background Styles, you can choose a different background color for your poster if you want to use something other than white. I'm not going to talk any more really about that, but I just wanted you to be aware of that. Keep in mind, though, that if you change the background to something other than white, it's important to be aware of the contrast between the text on your poster and the background color. If the contrast is not good, then it's going to be very hard for anyone to read the poster. In general, I would recommend using either white, or if you don't want to use white, use a light background color for your poster. So I just thought I would mention that. Now, as we get ready to add content to our poster, we want to think about how we want to lay out that content. Typically, we want to divide the poster into columns. This isn't the case for all posters, but generally speaking, especially for an academic type poster or a professional poster presented at a conference, a column layout works pretty well, and typically it might be 3 columns. Sometimes it could be 4 columns. So a good way to start off, a good place to start, is by setting up those columns. Now, if I go to the View menu over here, there are some options for Gridlines and Guides, which can help you to lay out your poster. Right now, this has just 2 guides, and you can move them around by clicking and dragging. I think I will choose the Control key, which will allow me to drag out a second guide. So since this poster is 30 inches wide right now, eventually it's going to be 60 inches wide when we print it at 200%, but for now I think that what I'm going to do, at least for purposes of this video, I'm going to put a guide at 5 inches to the right of center and put a guide at 5 inches to the left of center. So this divides our poster up into thirds, which can be useful for aligning columns of text. Okay, so that's that. Now you can also use grid lines. If I click over here, I'm going to turn off the guides just to show you how to do this. If I click on grid lines, you'll see it shows a huge number of grid lines. I don't normally use that, but you can change the spacing for the grid. So for example, you could make a grid that's 2 inches. If I click OK, you can see that's a very different grid. But I think for purposes of doing a poster, at least for me, I usually use guides rather than grid lines. Now, when we want to start adding our content, probably the first thing we want to do is put in some text for our title. So I'm going to click on the Insert tab over here, and I'm going to click Text Box, and now I can click and drag here, and that gives me a text box that I can use to enter in my text. Now, a good format, at least, or font rather, good all-purpose font I think is Arial, and I think I'm going to make it a 50-point Arial, which when it is printed will actually be 100-point, because we're going to print our poster at 200%. And for a title and all of the major headings in your poster, I would strongly recommend bolding that. The text underneath the headings should not be bolded because that will make your poster look too heavy. But the main title should definitely be bold, I would say. So let's just enter this in. Now, this particular title is not very long. Most poster titles are going to be longer than that, more characters. But I think in this case, let's pretend that this is actually the title we're using. I think I would want to make it a little bit bigger so that it'll fill up a little more space and be a little bit more dominant and noticeable for the viewer. We also want to, so I'll bump this up to 72. And then we also want to make the alignment center. So we're going to center that text. Now you're probably also going to add another text box. So I'll click Insert, another text box for your name or the names of all the people contributing to your poster and their affiliations. Now typically this should be in a fairly large font, but definitely smaller than the poster, than the title font, and also probably not bold, because that will take attention away from the title. You really want to have the title be the focus of attention. So let's add some text now for our main columns. We can click on a text box here, and we've got a text box here that we can use as a column. And if we enter text into this, eventually what will happen is it will wrap. The text will wrap, and we can resize this text box as appropriate. Right now this looks like it's snapping, doesn't it? It's snapping to the grid, I believe. Let's just see what's going on here. Snap objects to grid is turned on. That's what's going on with that. We don't really need that, I don't think. So I'm going to turn that off, and I'm also going to turn the display of the grid off and click OK. So now we can fine-tune this a little more easily. Now, if you'll notice also that as we change this, the wrapping will change. It automatically will wrap to fit the dimensions of the text box. So we've got a text box here for the first column. We probably also want to have a heading here. So you could have a heading here and hit return, and you might want to bold this heading. And you might want to also change the size of the text. Now, this is, of course, just a demonstration, so we're not going to go into detail about formatting, but you will need to think about the formats that you want to use for your headings and for your text under those headings. So that's a little bit about adding text. You also probably have to adjust the point size depending on how much content you have. Typically what a lot of people do, or what I do sometimes, is if I'm basing a poster on an abstract, say, or a paper that I've written, I will copy and paste from Microsoft Word into the text boxes of a poster. You can certainly do that. Now, depending on how much content you have, in a lot of cases you will need to edit that down quite a bit. You'll need to condense it to just the key points that you want to make. But you also may need to adjust the point size of your text. You don't want to crowd everything in too much, but you also you want some white space. That's always a good idea, but obviously you don't want too much white space either, so you need to think about that when you're setting the font size for your text. So one thing I forgot to mention is that if you want to add bullets to your text, you can do that by highlighting lines of text and then clicking over here and choosing bullets, and there are different styles of bullets that you can choose, but you can do that and that will automatically format your the lines of text that you've highlighted with bullets, and that's in the paragraph section of under the Home tab. I just want to go over one other thing, which is inserting images. So I'm going to go to the Insert tab. I'm going to click on Picture. You can find images you can browse to find images on your computer. So let's choose the koala. That's a nice looking picture. and click Insert, and here's an image that we just inserted by browsing. And as you can see, we can resize this by clicking on a corner handle, one of these little circles on the corners. You probably don't want to do it this way with one of the side handles, because that will distort the picture, which you don't want. So you can insert pictures very easily that way and move them around and fit them with your text. So that's, I think, enough for one video. I hope this has been helpful, and good luck with your poster.